Hi folks, welcome to the Sea Files. Let's take a quick ride and have a little talk. I've found that I can't always have the time. There we go. I can't always have the time to sit down in my office and do a really nice video. So I've decided just start doing them on the run. I am going to continue, however, on that series I'm doing on logical fallacies of evolution, and then I'm going to go into that other book that I'm looking at on wokeism and Christianity, and just kind of help Christians out with what the Bible says versus what critical race theory says, and how they contrast with one another. So, but we'll get into that as time allows me to do that. But right now, I need to talk about a report that I saw on X this morning that I posted on my X page, Jeff Claiborne on X. And this was by O'Keefe of Project Veritas. And he had, he's an investigative reporter. He's got investigative reporters that work with him. And he digs up a lot of interesting stuff and he puts it out to the public. Well, he went quiet for a little while. He kind of went into hiding, and Alex Jones was reporting on the fact that O'Keefe was going into hiding. And then I just saw this recent interview with him on some things that he dug up on the Federal Drug Administration. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. What he dug up is very interesting. Now, I want to caveat it with this. If what he dug up is accurate and true, and I'll state it that way, if it's accurate and true, then the Federal Drug Administration is, without a doubt, morally and ethically bankrupt and cannot be trusted. What he discovered was that, let me back up for just a moment. I'm sorry to do that, but I'm concerned that maybe some smaller children might watch this video. Unlikely, but if it was to happen, I just want to let the parents know that this is probably not appropriate for smaller children, what I'm about to say, okay? So I just want to qualify that for just a moment and give you a moment to make that adjustment if you need. Now, what he discovered was that the Federal Drug Administration under the Biden administration was buying and selling the body parts of aborted babies that were murdered in the womb and then sold as body parts. And I don't have all of the particular details on that. You would have to watch the video interview with O'Keefe and what was posted on my X page. There's an interview with him and he explains it in more detail. So I don't really care to go into the detail because it's so disturbing and grotesque what they were doing. What I want to discuss is the ethical and moral aspect of that. I made a video earlier and kind of went off into a rant, an angry rant over it. And I thought that's probably not the best way to present this, so I'm redoing the video now. And I'm going to try to stay calm as I'm talking about this, but it's not easy to do when you see this kind of just evil, satanic corruption in a federal agency like that. If they were doing what O'Keefe was accusing them of, based upon his investigation out of Project Veritas, then that means that, without a doubt, the Federal Drug Administration cannot be trusted to tell the truth about anything. They can't be trusted to tell the truth about food. They cannot be trusted to tell the truth about drugs. And they cannot be trusted to protect us from food or medical drugs that would harm us. That they would just go ahead and rubber stamp that and approve it and send it out to us. They wouldn't care. I mean, if they don't care about a baby in the womb and giving some kind of respect to human life, then that means that they don't care about you and me either. And they don't care what they're doing or what they're approving that is harmful to you and me. Well, why wouldn't they care? You would think that human beings would want to be, respectful and good to other human beings, right? Why do human beings eat their own, kill their own? Well, it's because of human nature. Our human nature is in Adam, and we're sinful creatures. And that's why we do it. Now, I'm really, really trying to stay calm. Because I'm really, really angry and upset about what I saw. This is the result of secular government. The lie of secular government was pushed on us my entire life. The separation of church and state. Schools have to be secular. Government has to be secular. That has resulted in government corruption. It has resulted in the moral bankruptcy of government agencies, the moral bankruptcy of government elected officials, the moral bankruptcy of cabinet members and maybe some presidents that went into the White House, and the moral bankruptcy of the judiciary. Some judges that are completely and utterly morally bankrupt. Now, to clarify, I don't believe in a theocracy. Islam believes in theocracy. Islam believes that they have to take over the world and have this theocratic Islamic kingdom, right? And everybody's got to bow down to them. I don't believe in that. And I don't believe in Christendom doing anything like that either. I do believe that the church has its lane and government has its lane. Government doesn't make demands of the church ecclesiastically. That's government going out of their bounds and their lane. And the church doesn't tell government how they are to run their procedures, procedural matters, and how they pass laws, and the executive branch, how they create agencies, or the judicial branch, how they have rules for how they conduct business in court. That's, how law enforcement officers enforce laws. That is civil authority, and that is outside of the lane of the church. So I make that clear. That's what I believe. I'm Presbyterian, and that's what Presbyterians believe. That's separation of church and state. What I do not believe is that the church retreats and acquiesces to secular morality or satanic morality or any kind of morality that is contrary to Christian morality, Christian morals and ethics. I do not believe that the church is to just bow down and just let that rule over them. Okay? Romans 13 clearly states that government is required by God Almighty to be moral and ethical. And which morals and which ethics? The ones that God has determined. We always use Romans 13 to say, well, the Christian has to obey the government. But we never look at the part in Romans 13 where it says that the government has to obey God. I'm not talking about a theocracy. I'm talking about moral and ethical government. There's a difference between a theocracy and having people in government who have good morals and good ethics. That's what I'm talking about. So understand, I need you to understand that the morals and the ethics that I believe government has to have are Christian morals and ethics. That means that we make laws against murder, 187 in the California Penal Code, because that's what I was a police officer in California for 30 years. So I'm familiar with that code. 187, murder, 459, burglary, 211, robbery, right? 261, rape, 484, petty theft. Well, I can go down the list. Do you know where those laws come from? They come from Christian ethics. Murder. Laws against murder. Thou shalt not commit murder. Laws against robbery. Thou shalt not steal. Laws against trespassing and taking things off of people's property. Thou shalt not covet. You see where I'm going? Laws against rape. That's under thou shalt not covet. Coveting another man's wife for whatever purpose you want her for. That's violating the laws of God. Right? Robbery, thou shalt not steal. What's the other one? For burglary, thou shalt not steal. I mean, they're under God's laws. Every law that is written by some moral code. And if the moral code we use to write laws is a secular moral code, which says human life has no value, that man was not made in the image of God, man is nothing more than the product of a primordial pool, then guess what we get? We get unethical, immoral, bankrupt government. And that's why you have what James O'Keefe discovered about the Federal Drug Administration and the horrific, horrible acts that they were committing against humanity. So no, I don't believe in a theocracy. But yes, I do believe in government that adheres to good Christian morals. Now notice I did not say Judeo-Christian. Look, Judeo is different than Christian, okay? And that goes into theological issues, which I don't think I can get into in this particular video. But there's a difference between Judaism and Christianity. You can't blend the two together. You're either of the Jewish religion or you're of the Christian religion. The Jewish religion rejects the Messiah and rejects all of the New Covenant books in the Bible. Christianity accepts the Messiah and accepts all the New Covenant books in the Bible. So it's not a Judeo-Christian ethic, because you see, the laws of God in the Old Covenant books were completed in the New Covenant books. And Christ explained the commandments that God gave to Moses. Christ explained them even further and with more clarification in the New Covenant books. To look at a woman, to lust after a woman, for a man, is to commit adultery in his heart. To hate your brother is to commit murder in your heart. Those are two examples of how Christ took, thou shalt not covet and thou shalt not murder, to an even further extreme. So that's why you can't say Judeo-Christian, because one rejects the Messiah and the other one accepts the Messiah. It's either Judeo or it's Christian. And so I will say Christian values. That's what we need in our government. And I'm not talking about a state church. That's different, like the Church of England. Okay, that would be a theocracy. I'm talking about men and women coming from all across the country, from various different churches, various different denominations and so forth, but who have good, moral, Christian, ethical beliefs, going into government and governing from that worldview. If we had that in the FDA, what James O'Keefe discovered about them buying and selling baby body parts would have never, ever happened. Ever happened. All right, I'll end it here, but I'll have more to say later. All right, God bless, and I'll see you next time on the C-Files.